Hello guys, welcome back. I want to talk about something and I had an experience last night and I wasn't sure if I should talk about it or, what should I do about it. And for the last couple days I've been kind of avoiding the topic because I thought, well, if I avoid it, it'll go away. And it's only getting more intense because I have been avoiding it. And I've been working a lot with Odin and Loki lately, Odin especially. And as I'm working with him, he's working like, remember I told you about the stealth feelings with Loki where stuff would just suddenly come up? And last night, guys, I had this crippling attack. And that's the only way I can say, like, a crippling anxiety attack where everything for my entire life came to visit me at once. Cheers. Um, we live in a Christian society, and they have very different beliefs than we do. They believe people are basically bad and flawed, and so forth and so on. And all the people I know in real life are Christian, at least nominally so. And for a while, I felt extremely alone, and I felt lonely. And the ironic thing was, I'd finally accepted Odin as my god, and as a creator god. And I could just get a sense of knowing this is right. When people were talking about God, I wasn't thinking about their version of God. I was thinking about Odin and saying, well, that's Odin they're talking about. Especially, I woke up this morning and saw this animal miracles thing about the wolf that saved somebody, and I'm like, that's Odin. But last night I had this terrible, crippling panic attack. You would think I'd be elated, and I was, to find Odin, in a sense, even though I've known him all my life. But I had this crippling panic attack because I never felt that alone, because I knew I was the only one I knew that believed that way. If I went to my friend and started testifying to her about Odin the way she testifies to people about Jesus, she would look at me, okay? And we know she would. And these animal miracle things are heavily saturated with that Judeo-Christian mindset. They don't talk about sin, but they talk about a miracle, and they're not referring to Odin or Loki, so far as you know. And I heard, yeah. And that was the thing. And I had this crippling fear, and I felt all alone, and I felt like I was certain, even though I had come to accept Odin as the creator god, Odin as god, and Loki and the rest are still real, but Odin is, the main god. I felt like I was with, suddenly Odin went from this beautiful creator god, this god that had created everything. Some say along with Loki and Honir. I forget Loki in there, and I heard, yeah. He went in my mind from this beautiful, majestic, all-powerful creator god to this weak, tiny, insignificant god that could not protect me in a society dominated by their god. And I felt like this horrible, terrible, sinful person, because when Catholics damage you, they do it really well. And I was going to burn in hellfire, and I was going to end up homeless and die in an alley. I could see this happening because I chose the wrong god. And that's the difference between our gods, guys. Their god, or their religion rather, their religion, not their god, teaches that if they don't love their god and do everything he says, this all-loving god will abandon them to hellfire. Our gods, when I was in the midst of the panic attack, Loki's like trying to tap me on the shoulder and goes, sweetie, we'll take you to church, okay? You can go to church. He was trying to comfort me, and Odin was trying to comfort me. They said, if you still feel this bad in the morning, if you still feel this way about yourself and feel this way about us, we will personally walk you to the church. You will walk on the church and you will bang on that door until they let you in. They were that serious. And I asked Odin, I said, why is this happening to me? He says, you have all this garbage inside you and it has to come out. I said, but we already did this. He says, oh, there are layers and layers and layers and people. He says, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but there's no other way. It's painful to come out because it was painful when it went in. when you're a little child and you're being taught that you're basically a bad person, that you're sinful, and therefore Jesus had to suffer and die on the cross, and all the Catholic saints had to be martyrs because all people were sinful and horrible and doomed to hell unless God says otherwise, that does something to you as a child. And in my day and age, back in the 80s, there was none of this love talk there is now. God basically hated you, and you were only going to be saved if Jesus saved you. And God didn't have time to talk to you. That's why you have all the angels and saints, and don't keep bothering Jesus. And Jesus is in eternal agony and suffering for your sins. Wonderful religion. And so Odin and Loki have had to do a lot of these intensive healing things from time to time, and they never announce they're coming. They never do. And it always seems to come like right after I make a deeper connection to Loki, I will have one of these attacks. And this time it was Odin's turn. I had this deeper connection to Odin, and I had this terrible attack. And Odin said, frankly, we're surprised any of you last because you live in a society dominated by that Christian culture, and there's nothing wrong with being Christian. I'm not saying that. But we live in a society surrounded by that culture where they all assume they're right and we're all wrong and we're all doomed to hell, and a lot of them will be happy to tell us, though far more will be happy to leave us alone too and say, well, maybe I don't know everything. I think far more Christians are more like us than they are like the yappy few, like the one I know. And I noticed as I went by today, I went by her place, I stopped to be polite to talk to her, and she was agitated I was talking to her because she was doing her puzzle. But damned if when I had my hands full and was going by, she didn't want me to stop. And I was like, no. She even, I think, pulled out the chair because my fox hearing. I was like, no, no. I tried to stop on purpose on my way up and tried to tell her about the roof being okay, and she really didn't even want to hear it. I don't know, man. I don't know. So it was just, our gods love us enough that if I had wanted to go to church, if I had wanted to turn my back on Loki and turn my back on Odin and turn my back on Wicca and paganism and whatever else, had I wanted to do that, if that's the one thing that would have made me feel safe, not happy perhaps, but safe, they would have let me do that. Odin has actually been set me up for this. He says, will you testify for me? Because testify is a Christian thing, because they feel compelled to. They feel compelled to share what Jesus or God or whomever has done in their life, and they feel like they must do this thing. We share stories every day about what Loki has done for us, or Odin has done for us, or whoever has done for us. Well, we share them because we love our gods and we like to help each other out. Our gods aren't ready to punish us. There's no pagan hell. Well, there is, but you know what I mean. That's actually a paradise. There's no pagan lake of fire waiting for you if you piss the gods off, or you go become a Jew, or a Muslim, or an atheist, or anything else. Our gods love us. Emotion time. Our gods love us and won't punish us if we decide we're too freaked out and the pressure of the outside society is so great that we just, we kind of cave in and we go back to their church. The only thing Odin cared about, he told me this, he says, the only thing I would ever want from you is that you make the decision out of love and not out of fear. He says, if you make it out of fear, I will do everything in my power to stop you. He says, but if you made it out of love, I will let you go. I don't care who you serve, but it better be a God you love. And emotion time. And he's that kind of God. I got a tape in today, and it had Lone Wolf on the one story. I'm getting like 5 books on one tape at this point, the Matter for the Blind. And it had Hellgate on the other, so I know it was Odin and Hell checking in and saying, we love you and we care about you. But if you're this miserable and going to have these many things come up, and maybe you can never be fixed because you were raised Catholic, and maybe it never completely goes away, they were willing to let me go to church. If I thought it would just be an easier, safer path, they were like, you know what? We love you. We adore you. We're proud and happy to have you. Odin considers me his own. They all treat me as their own. Loki treats me as his own. But they were like, if you feel that bad, if you feel that broken down, you can go to church. And it wasn't that. All that garbage had to come up. All that fear of what if there really is a hell had to come out. All that fear of what if the people that hate homosexuals are right had to come out, because you guys know I'm gay. And all the fear of what my judgmental friends think. You know they would hate me if they found out I was gay and pagan. Oh, holy hell, they'd be burning me alive. They burn crosses in this area. They would be burning me alive. Um, and that's the thing. I got the strongest sense today that that woman really hates me. The other friend, she actually likes me. She can be very blunt, very tell it like it is, and you gotta watch her sometimes because she'll volunteer people for things. You know, she's good at volunteering people for things. But you know, I know to watch her, and I know she's more honest. Where the other one, her whole thing this whole time has been trying to get me into church. I know it has been. And I think she's mighty pissed that I don't really want to go to church. I don't feel loved by their God. I don't feel attracted to their God. To me, I've always known intellectually, and that's the difference. I've always known intellectually that our gods are real, and that Odin is real, and that Odin has always been my God. Who I was praying to in church was Odin, and Loki and a couple others, but mainly Odin. And it's one thing to know that intellectually, but then when it hits you in the heart, that's when it can terrify you guys. That's when you can have the panic attack and be wanting to run into the local church and dive into a fountain of holy water because you are sure you're going into hell, and you're sure you're hallucinating, and you're sure you made up all these gods. And of course, if you went and you asked a priest, is Odin real, what do you think he's going to say? If he doesn't want to be excommunicated, what do you think he's going to say? So it's just sometimes we're going to have that happen. I think we should be more open about it. When you live in a culture that refers to your gods either as these mythical things that only stupid, far out, flaky people believe in, or just parts of the human psyche, I can't stand that, or space aliens, or demons, you're going to have days when you're going to go, they have the advantage. They have the decided advantage of being able to go whenever they like to a temple or whatever, and be able to have a whole bunch of people that think just like them confirm that they're right and everybody else is wrong. So they could see horrible things about their gods, but they can just, you know, go, oh, their gods, their God, and just go, oh, those people aren't right. And I know they're not right because the Pope says they're not right, or Pastor Bob says they're not right, or whomever. They have the decided advantage, and they have a big book to hit people with. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like Christians. Most leave everybody else alone like we leave everybody else alone. But it is one of those things. Sometimes if you live in a culture that sees your religion as bad, sometimes it's going to come up, especially if you grew up in that culture and were part of that culture. I don't have a pagan community around here to go to. I don't have, you know, like a coven leader or a high priest or someone to call at 2 in the morning when I'm feeling terrible. Coffee. Dramatic speech. Sip the coffee. But I do have our gods, and we all do. So if you do get into a dark night of the soul like that, you know, talk to Loki, talk to Odin. They understand. For over 2,000 years we've been getting it in stereo from everywhere. And especially as a gay person, that came up, and damned if gay positive stuff didn't just jump into my feed today, and wolf stuff didn't just jump into my feed, and that animal miracle with a wolf jumped into my feed. So I know it was Odin going, you know what? You can see me as a creator god. You can see me as God. It's okay. Their boogeyman god doesn't exist and isn't going to come get you. And as Loki was saying, he goes, how do you know it's not all Odin? Odin did travel a lot. How do you know it's not all Odin? Me, because I travel a lot too. So yeah, I heard cheering back here. I'm starting to get those high notes he hits. He's like, how do you know it wasn't me or Odin, huh? So, you know, they've been cheering me up, but it is a harder thing to maintain your pagan faith in a world where pagan faith is no longer dominant. When we were the dominant ones, it was probably very easy because you could just go to the temple, or you could just go talk to the high priest, or you could just go offer incense, or you could go in the woods and stuff like that. But it's harder today. It's okay to have dark times. Our gods don't punish us for having times where all of our old teachings come back to haunt us. If you grew up Roman Catholic, for the longest time I hated myself because I was a woman and women are worthless in the Catholic Church. And I was gay. I knew I was gay. I just didn't know what flavor. And I was pagan. I knew I was a witch. So I had every reason to hate myself. And I was taught that God hated me because I was gay, because I was pagan, because, I was never going to, I was unattracted at all to having babies and having a family. That just didn't appeal to me. So, it took a very long time for Loki to heal a lot of those wounds and for a lot of other pagan gods and goddesses to heal those wounds, and for Odin to work on those wounds. But sometimes, when you connect to a god really strongly in your heart, um, it brings up the past. I spent decades trying to get their god to love me and to accept me even though I was gay and even though I was pagan. And every so often that comes back to haunt you. And it was always Odin answering me. That's why God was always answering me. Odin was always answering me. I don't know who their god is. I really don't. I just know that if I go into a church, it feels incredibly sad and depressed. And they're always mourning their god, and their god's in perpetual torture because of them, where Odin will sarcastically remind you about hanging on the real tree, but he's not going to cry and go like this and expect everybody to fall down at his feet once a year. He's over it. He's good. Same thing with Loki. Loki's not going to be the eternal victim. None of our gods are. They went through tough times, and they will explain to you we have something in this universe called metaphors. So they're not even that big on whether or not we take them literally. If I accept Odin as creator god, great. If I don't, that's fine too. They just care that we are decent people and we're decent to each other, and they just care that we're happy. If I was truly unhappy and miserable with Odin and Loki, they would be the first ones to take me wherever I wanted to go, whether it be a church or a synagogue or a mosque or wherever, or become an atheist or worship a tree or whatever. They would be the first gods to do it. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys because it was both the greatest love you've ever felt connecting with Odin that deeply, but it was also terrifying because now that it was connected to Odin, even though I could see this magnificent eternal being finally, and know that he's perfectly strong enough and capable enough to be a creator god, I could also at the same time paradoxically feel like I had made the biggest mistake in the world. And the only thing I got from growing up Catholic is that seems to be a step on the way. As you connect to a god, you will go into this state of ecstasy, and then the very next second you're curled up on the floor crying because none of it can be true and you're obviously insane. So it's one of those things that if you're going through it with Odin or Loki or whomever you worship, it just seems to be natural. It just seems to be natural. It seems to be kind of like a pressure release valve so we don't get so carried away with our ecstasy. I really don't know, but it does seem to be a natural thing. You're carried away with ecstasy one moment, and then the next moment you're emotionally devastated and all this repressed garbage comes up. So, I kind of felt like that was timely to share with you because it can be hard because we don't have usually a priest or priestess to go to. We have ourselves and we have the gods, and even though that's more than enough, it can be very frightening and lonely at times, and that's the only way to describe it because, like I said, we don't have the luxury of them being able to say, well, I'm going to church or I'm going to mosque or synagogue and I'm going to talk to the leader. We don't always get that luxury. And everybody's had that horrible thing of looking up a priest or priestess and getting their ears blasted off because the priest or priestess don't know your business. So, it's sometimes a hard road to walk, but it's worth it. And, it just confirmed to me how much our gods do love us because they're willing to let us go. If it's making us that miserable or unhappy, they're willing to let us go. They don't hold us in place with threats. They don't hold us, Loki's back. Yeah, I do. They don't hold us in place with threats. They don't have this punishment waiting for us after death if we go and become another religion or none at all. So I just figured I would share that with you. I've been trying to make that video for the last couple of days and just didn't know how to articulate it. If I sound horrible, it's because I'm allergic to everything outside. I am the worst person to be a witch or a pagan. Seriously, I got tested once. I'm allergic to dust, to pollen, to grass, to everything. Everything that's outside, I'm allergic to it. I'm a good witch. So I will see you guys later. Bye bye.